order. We'll start, as we always do, with a board member roll call. So this is Paul Ashton. I'm the chair and I'm present. We'll kick it to Bobby.
I'm Bobby Strang, member present.
I'm Errol Folks, member present.
Jeff Tignor, member present.
Great. Everybody's here. How exciting. And I feel like, does everybody know all of the staff who are currently on the screen? If not, we can do introductions as well. Or you all could do introductions as well.
Yeah, well, we got a few changes, so everyone might not be aware of it. Everybody knows Mona Andrews. She's over here on my screen, chief investigator, and she'll be talking in a few minutes about the statistics. And then on the bottom of my screen is Keisha Cleveland. Keisha, is that an actual picture of you, or are you live? I can't tell right now.
She's
okay,
live.
You're live. All right, Keisha is our public affairs person. So she monitors the meetings and handles all of our public affairs and outreach events. And Mark Ross, right below me, he's an old newbie, not chronologically old, but he's been with the agency for a while, and he was just recently promoted to special assistant / legal advisor, legal counsel. He's taken over Alicia's old position. And he's working out pretty well so far. We'll see how it goes tomorrow. And then on the bottom is Christopher Weber. He's one of our program. I forget what your official title is, Chris, but one of his main jobs is handling the mediation program. And he's going to talk a little bit about the mediation program tonight to give us an update on where that's at. And that's everybody. I think we all know Alicia.
Thanks, Mike. That's very helpful. We don't have any members of the public present, so we can go right through the public comment period. The next order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from the November 18th, 2021 board meeting. So if the board members could... Oh. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so that is unanimous. Thank you, Earl, keeping us moving. Mike, is there any old business to cover?
No old business.
All right. With that, you can dive right into the agency report.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our current operating status is we're fully operational, but for the last several weeks now, and until the end of January, we're going to be operating on a limited minimum in-office staffing posture. So what that means is our lobby is open for the whole day, and we always have a duty person here and a supervisor from the investigations division, and usually somebody in the administrative section in the back. For instance, today I'm here and Chris is here in administration, and then we had one of the investigative supervisors, Jessica, was here, and Brittany left, was doing intake. And that was pretty much all of our staff for today, and that's how it is every day with minimum office staffing. We're open, and if someone has an officer interview or in-person interview, then they come in on that day. They work in the office that day, otherwise they're teleworking on all the other days. And we'll look at it again next week to see where the numbers are headed, to see if we're going to extend that or not. We haven't heard yet from DCHR or DC government in general on what they're going to do. Currently, DC government as a whole is under the same posture until the end of the month too, and they may or may not extend it, and we may or may not too, depending on what the numbers look like. We'll just handle it day by day, and everybody's been very good about being flexible about that. We had, by the way, last count we had 5 positive cases in the last couple of weeks in our office, and starting a few weeks ago, and that's what prompted us to switch over to minimum in-office staffing as soon as a trend started happening there. Because remember, we're a small office; we don't have that many people, so you have almost 20% of the office out on with positive test result, and we have to take action, and that's what we did. And we've had no positive tests that I know of since we went on minimal office staffing. So, there was no link either, by the way. We could find any link to anybody in the office that it was going to, but we would have to know. Nobody will ever know how this stuff originates. So that's our operating status. As far as police reform in general, we had a hearing back in October in front of the DC Council on Chairman Mendelson's bill, and there's been zero activity on anything since October. Partly as a result of COVID, partly as a result of the holidays, and partly as a result of ongoing budget hearings that are going on now, and budget meetings. And possibly partly because they haven't been able to resolve it on the Wilson building about whatever compromises they're going to come up with. So nothing scheduled in the near future on that in particular. Our next hearing in front of the council is next month, February 17th. That's our performance oversight hearing. Again, every DC government agency testifies in front of the council once a year. It's called a performance oversight hearing, and ours is scheduled for next month. And we basically spend the time, there's quite an elaborate set of questions we have to answer in advance about all of the operational activities. They really cover everything from head to toe, and then our testimony is composed of a lot of questions and answers from different council members about our performance metrics for the past year and for fiscal year 22, that is from October last year up until the present. So we're getting ready to prepare for that hearing and answering all those questions. I think there might be something that comes up at that hearing next month regarding police reform in general. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't, but there's no voting activity and no particular bills that are coming up, just probably some questions and conversation about it is what I think. And by the way, MPD's performance oversight hearing is the same day as ours, February 17th. So if you wanted to tune in on it or watch part of it, it's always on channel 13. I think they're both going to be live on channel 13 cable TV. If not, you can stream it through the DC website if you wanted to catch part of it or whatever.
And Chairman Allen, oh, I'm sorry, Mike. Chairman Allen also always live streams it on his Facebook page.
Right. Yeah. So there's lots of ways. If you want to see it, it's going to be an all-day affair. So if you want to catch part of it and you want to see what it looked like, that would be my suggestion. And usually the police department goes first, and then whenever they're done, then we go. So sometimes it's not till the evening by the time they get around, unless it's hard to predict. So that's the legislative activity that's coming up in the near future. Our next report that's going to be coming out is our annual use of force report. That's a calendar year report. So since we're just new into the calendar year, we're waiting for MPD to finish up their final fourth quarter reporting to us. And then we can put that use of force report out. So that'll probably be at least another month or so before they get all that, even from MPD. And at least that was the case last year. And then we'll put together our report. Probably it'll be a little bit more jazzed up than last year's report, but it'll cover most of the same information and statistical data. We have a new staff person. Her name is Karina Bleach. She officially started this week. She was here in the office today. She's been here for the last 2 days. As a matter of fact, doing some in-person training and working with the duty person on intake cases. She has almost about a decade of experience in DC government. She worked for the Department of Forensics as an evidence technician. She's one of those people that goes to the scene of major incidents and collects all the evidence at the scene and takes the measurements, inventories, and sometimes they testify in court about it's things that detectives used to do, and now they have the separate agency, the Department of Forensics, that responds to all major crime scenes and does that. She did that for almost a decade. And she started Tuesday this week. So we still have one more investigator vacancy that we're gonna work on filling in the relatively near future. That's about it on the narrative of my report. The last part of the report is the investigation status. And Mona, would you mind giving us a summary of our investigation status?
You're on mute, Mona.
Unmute me, sorry. Also on the report is just an updated dismissal schedule through May. So if anyone needs to switch or anything, just let me know. I'm happy to switch it on our calendar and work it out with you guys. But the other thing, statistics, as you'll see, we pretty close to last year. We have fewer open cases, primarily because we have, based on the date that I pulled these on last Thursday, we have less complaints, I think about 10% less, a little more than that maybe, as far as that goes. We actually end up getting the next day a number of complaints, so we're probably close, not as where we were last year exactly, but a little closer than the date that I pulled them. But yeah, primarily, we're probably about the same speed that we were last year. It's just that we have less complaints, so we have less open cases, few less closed cases, but nothing too significant. It's hard because this is only 1 quarter of data, or 3 months of data, so it can change a lot. Plus it's been cold, so that always affects things when it's cold and there's not many people out and about interacting. So are there any questions?
No, I don't see any. Thanks a lot, Mona, for that update. Again, it's been kind of a slow period, mainly due to COVID and the holidays. But I think the office is doing a very good job, especially the investigative section, keeping up with everything, keeping our caseload under control. I'd like to move on to the new business section, if that's okay, Mr. Chair? Okay.
You're muted, Paul.
You would think after all this time on Zoom, you could manage mute buttons. No, I was just gonna say, I see that four staff went to NACOL, and I just wanted to know if maybe we could get a quick update. Did you actually physically go to Tucson this time?
Sure, I can fill you in, although Mark went as well. So I went to NACOL, Mark Cross went to NACOL, and then the 2 investigators, Danielle Sutton and Brittany Clift, went as well. It was in person. They had a lot of COVID protocols in place. You had to show your vaccination upon check-in, or a negative test, and all sessions were masked, and they did as much outside as possible. So all of the receptions and things like that were outside to take care of COVID. But it was certainly a smaller event than has been the past. Slightly fewer attendees, slightly more scaled back schedule. I think, Paul, you'll recall having gone in the past, oftentimes they'd have 4 sessions at one time going on to choose from. The most sessions going on at any given time were 2. So it was certainly a more scaled back program, but I still think it was really interesting. There was a big focus on building up police oversight programs. Obviously, over the past couple of years, particularly during COVID, we've seen the interest in police oversight explode across the country. So there were several new offices there, or people who were starting offices, but they also had sessions on reforming oversight. So for agencies that have existing, or jurisdictions that have existing oversight, how that can adapt and change. Right now we're seeing in the Bay Area, there were actually several oversight organizations from the Bay Area, so San Francisco, Berkeley, there was one from Napa, that have been reforming. So that was interesting and how it affects us, because we're sort of seeing that there may be reforms and changes coming and how agencies have adapted to that. There was also a lot of, I know I went to a really interesting session on mental health responses and various different ways that jurisdictions have adapted programs for mental health consumers, and either having social workers co-respond with the officers, meaning they're in the same vehicle, or having officers respond and social workers respond separately, or variations of that. We know in the district they've been piloting a program to have social workers respond. It has been limited in nature. It's only, I think, during normal business hours, so 9 to 5, which clearly limits its scope. But some of these other agencies and jurisdictions were talking about how they piloted programs and then how they scaled them up. Most of the jurisdictions that were speaking about it were much smaller jurisdictions than us. One of the main ones being Boulder, Colorado, which is much smaller than DC. So those are some interesting things. I don't know, Mark, if you have any highlights that you want to address.
A point of inquiry, please.
Yeah.
What does NACOL stand for?
Absolutely. Yeah, we always use the abbreviation. I think we may have talked about it in your orientation, Earl, but it's the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement,
Gotcha.
which is a mouthful, but it is the national organization that brings together all of the oversight agencies across the country. They've also recently expanded to include more corrections oversight. It really before was just traditional law enforcement, police departments, things like that. They're really making a push now to include oversight for corrections officers as well.
Thank you.
No problem. Mark, again, is there anything else you wanted to highlight or speak about your experience there?
I think my favorite part of all the sessions was probably they actually did one on oversight and collective bargaining. So it was sort of discussing the unions and role in all of this, the unions' roles in all of this. And
Please.
I found that interesting because that's the one thing that most community members don't ever really think about when they think about civilian oversight. I think is the way the role that the unions also play in all of this, in this entire, I don't know if you want to call it an industry or this sector of the government, I suppose. But that was probably the most interesting part to me anyway. But it was fun, other than that. Had a good time.
Thank you. And if there are no questions on that, then we can move to your new business, Mike.
All right. Chris Weber is our mediation coordinator. That's one of his job titles on his door. He has a few others too, but that's one of his big ones. Chris assembled that Excel spreadsheet that I put in the materials for you that breaks down all of the mediation stats for the last several years and tracks it, and he puts together a quarterly report. So I thought it would be a good idea this time, since we have a little bit of time at this meeting available to us, that he would just give us a quick overview of the last quarterly statistics, and then any questions you might have about that. So Chris, you want to give us your speech that you've been preparing for today?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I call myself the program coordinator, or that's what we call me. I actually don't remember what the official name is. Stat-wise, I guess as you saw on the spreadsheet, we're up a little bit from the previous quarter. We had 15 referrals. Out of those referrals, 12 of them made it to a mediation, and out of those mediations, 10 of them were resolved, and 2 of them were unresolved, for a resolution rate of about 83%, give or take. And when it comes to scheduling, on average, it takes our mediators about 18 days, again on average, to contact the complainant and schedule the mediation session. And usually between when we get the complaint to when the mediation is held, it's an average of about 51 days, which is down a lot from 5 to 6 years ago. And these numbers kind of stay kind of very similar throughout the quarters and the years. I don't know if you have any questions, but that's the short overview of the statistics from Q1.
Chris, would you mind just, since there's a couple people who may not be aware of this,
Okay.
since most of them, all of them except one this last quarter was done remotely, could you just walk through when an investigator refers a mediation to you, just give the board members an idea of what happens next, what you do, and how that works.
Okay, well, since we went to remote mediations, I used WebEx to do them. I kind of tried to keep everything kind of how we were doing it before we went to remote mediations. It's just we used WebEx. I kind of put together the package. I kind of tell the mediators when I give them the referral packet, like, hey, this is what the complaint consists of. This is kind of the misunderstanding. This is what the mediation should focus on. The mediation will get scheduled. I kind of have to send out multiple emails now with information on how the various parties can attend the mediation session. I also like distribute links for surveys, pre and post survey. We have a hard time getting those back because it's just the way things are in regards to trying to collect these surveys. But I do keep track of the surveys that are collected. So once the parties all get there, I kind of try to do the mediation the same. Parties will get there. I kind of ask anybody if they have any questions before I leave. And of course, because I can't sit on the mediations, nobody from OPC is in the mediation, so the confidentiality agreement can be enforced when it comes to the mediations. I kind of, the first time it was kind of just like blind trust. Hopefully this goes okay when the remote mediation started. But mediation will start. I'll be available in case anything comes up during the mediation, and then afterwards I kind of get a notification and the paperwork submitted to me. Hey, here's the outcome of the mediation. And what usually I get it, hey, it went pretty well. Thanks a lot, and that's basically the short overview of the mediation process and how that works now.
For the two that were unresolved, do we know why they were unresolved?
I mean, the mediators, because there's the confidentiality agreement, they don't tell me the specifics of what happened. I can kind of, I mean, sometimes they'll say like, hey, that didn't go well because not specifically these two mediations, but it'll come down to like, you know, the complainant was just couldn't get off of something. They were very disagreeable about the events, and sometimes, no matter how things are framed by a complainant, sometimes they show up with other, not really engaging in the mediation process per se, but they kind of they're just not agreeable to having it resolved, which is okay, and we tell them that as long as they participate in good faith in the mediation. But there's a variety of reasons, and sometimes they just can't get over a traffic ticket being issued to them, even though it was a very valid traffic ticket. Well, not a valid traffic ticket, and that's something we can't really make a determination on. The mediators do a good job of trying to pinpoint these things and keeping the conversation on what they should be talking about, but I mean, there's a variety of reasons why it's unresolved. It's kind of hard to go into it case by case, especially with the confidentiality agreement, but the mediators will give me information like, hey, maybe the mediation process could be defined better during the intake process, and a lot of the times I tell them usually it was defined. They get a lot of information about mediation, so sometimes it's just one of those things, and sometimes these things just aren't going to resolve just because that's the nature of it with you know, everything going on in the news and whatnot. So it's kind of hard to say, but there's a variety of reasons why it's unresolved.
I don't want to assume, so could you confirm what FTA stands for?
That's failed to appear. With now the remote, it's kind of easier to get them. Maybe they forgot the mediation was happening, or maybe they're having a hard time signing into the mediation sessions due to technological issues, but that's when the mediation is scheduled. They've gotten multiple reminders that the mediation is being held and they just fail to appear. They don't contact us about why they weren't there. They just didn't show up. And then at that point, it's like, hey, you failed to appear. You weren't participating in good faith, and that's what FTA stands for.
I think another thing that's important to point out about our mediation program is we have one of the older mediation programs among oversight agencies in the country. I'm sure some of you are aware of that, but it means we're often called upon to give advice to other agencies that might be starting up a mediation program. In the fall, I spoke on a panel. Chicago is currently, they're reevaluating their whole oversight process, but one piece of it is to build up a mediation program. So I spoke on a panel with a couple of other folks who have mediation programs about our mediation program and how it works for us. I know at NACOL people were asking me about our mediation program, and actually just this week I did a call with a lieutenant in the Internal Affairs Division of the Maryland Park Police to talk about our mediation program because they're thinking about starting one up there. So from what you can tell from Chris, it's a little opaque even to us because we're not in the mediations themselves. But we do know that it allows the complainant to speak directly to the officer, whereas if a case were dismissed, they would not be given that opportunity. So that's how we view it. It allows them to feel heard in a way they might otherwise not.
Thanks a lot, Chris. You're doing a great job coordinating that program. Overall, we're running about 1 out of every 8 or 9 cases, investigation cases through mediation right now, and the vast majority of those are resolved favorably, and we have better participation, as Chris explained, because it's remote. People don't have to take time off from work and travel downtown to our office to do the mediation, so it's working out pretty well so far. This way, we're pretty satisfied with the program, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Alicia, but I think we're the only program that I know of in which the officers are required to attend. We're basically subpoenaing the officers and they must attend. Most other mediation programs, the officers can back out of it, right?
That's correct. I have not seen any other program yet that requires it for the officers. People are often surprised by that. I think it allows us to not have to, programs when they're starting off, I think would have a lot of fight from the police officers about mediation. I think programs that have been around for a while, it becomes less of an issue, but then you're always dealing with new officers coming in or new union reps or things like that. We have seen over the years when there's a new union rep who comes in, they sort of need to learn about the program at first before they understand the benefits to the officers of participating in mediation, and if it resolves, then the complaint is closed, and that's obviously a benefit for the officers. But a lot of other programs talk about the resistance they have when they first start up their programs because they cannot make the officers attend. They have to agree to it. But so that is unique.
Yeah, and even with mandatory attendance, I mean, almost uniformly the officers are all satisfied, at least in the surveys we get back. They're all satisfied with the results if they had that opportunity. Plus, well, they get paid for coming in to do it, usually overtime, and it's a case that's not being referred for discipline. It's a case that doesn't go on their disciplinary record. So a lot of officers are very satisfied with our mediation program, even though it's mandatory. Kind of an interesting result. So it's working out pretty well.
And for those situations where the mediation doesn't resolve anything, what is the next step after that?
Then we give the complainant every opportunity if it's not resolved. If it's not resolved during the mediation, then case goes back to the investigation section, we'll look at it once more, and almost always it'll have to be dismissed, because almost always it's a case that we would not have been able to go forward with for discipline anyway. And that's one of the reasons why it would be sent to mediation. Either there was no violation of policy to begin with, or it was a very minor policy violation that would not have gone to discipline. So the case is almost always subsequently dismissed after the mediation, and the complainants are aware of that. But even despite that, that just having the opportunity to sit down with the officer one-on-one almost always, I shouldn't say almost always, but very frequently satisfies the complainant. Even though in the mediators terms, it is not resolved. I mean, both parties did not sign an agreement at the time saying everything's okay. Both parties typically will walk away feeling better about the whole thing, even if it's dismissed. So.
That's good. All right, thanks. That's really helpful.
Any other questions for Chris? Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Chris.
And Mr. Chair, that completes our new business.
Well, that's great. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned at 6:34 p.m. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Chris, for presenting. And I guess we'll see each other in a month or 2 months. 2 months, yes, every other month. If not before then.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, guys.
All right.
See you later.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Aye.